So
And it
I
just,
thought maybe we could talk about the spiritual realm of breath work today. So, I mean, I'm contemplating both of our practices and your somatic practice and my trauma recovery practice
yeah.
that's holistic. And I'm thinking about my own experiences in my own meditation practice and how breath work can open up spaces and open up portals to spaces that are ephemeral and in our subconscious and
Yeah.
into our deep, deep, deep subconscious and can produce seismic shifts. And so I'm thinking about breath work as a access point that we're all gifted with in terms of like
Mm.
how to move just beyond the physical vessel and open into spaces of the divine or spiritual.
Yeah, I love that, especially because it is like a portal and it's the only part of our autonomic nervous system that we have any say over, really. Like we can do stuff, we can manipulate it, we can use it to change states within us. It's very physiological.
Totally. And this is the profound space that I want to talk about. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I've been living in this vessel for a lot of time now, and I have never gone so deep into breath work that I'm like able to
Wow.
digest and metabolize blockages and pain. And it's almost like if you sit with it long enough, it'll fracture and break up, and then it'll transform the landscape, and then get this transformation happening where you're actually like when you're able to sit with discomfort or painful spaces, then you can actually
Mhm.
digest and metabolize them and open up. And I mean, if you sit with it long enough and are brave enough to digest and metabolize, I'm finding I'm in this
Mhm.
massively expansive space that's like divine.
So what does it feel like? I mean, what is it like to be in that space for you? What
And
does divine feel like for you?
it's completely open. It doesn't end.
Okay.
It's like
Okay.
it's almost like my body is turned into a portal of the universe. Like we're
Whoa.
I am
That
I
sounds
am
terrifying to me. I love this. Yeah. So like there's no like you're like porous, very porous and open.
it's not
Is
even
that
porous. It's like it's almost like my outer ribs dissolve into the outer parts of the universe.
yeah, that does sound like a spiritual experience. So you can achieve that through your breath work, is what I'm understanding.
In my bed, it's amazing.
That is cool. I mean, I don't actually have a lot of experience with breath work per se as a modality. I use some breath work from the standpoint of like working with the nervous system, for example, and what to look for in breath when working with folks, and what to look for in ourselves when working with folks. Um, so can you tell me what the breath work you're doing, what is it like?
I literally am I wonder if I can put it in words. I'm literally breathing into my vessel. So I'm feeling the like space of my lung system. And then I'm practicing like slightly expanding it or slightly finding where the pain points or the tension points are. And
Mhm.
oftentimes when I first started, I noticed there was kind of like these harder globs that were very painful. So
Mhm.
um I'm tend towards the fearless. So I was like, oh, I'll go there. So I just kind of
Wow.
breathe
Okay.
into the space of pain and breathe with it
Mm.
and see if I can get it going from what feels like a hard, constricted, non-moving space to see if I can if I can get inside of it and sit in it, if it will start to almost like breathe or move. And then what will happen
Right.
to it if I stay inside of it and love it, or stay inside of it and love it and admire it and breathe in it and accept it? Like, what is it going to do in there? So, usually, what happens is, I guess I would say over the course of this practice, is that usually once you go in and love those hard, painful spaces, they respond really well to love, and they will like almost like weep away or fall away. And it's almost like they fractalize or they dissipate or disintegrate or something. And then you're kind of like, eventually you just like,
Uh-huh.
there's a big, big, big space there. How does this relate to, like, how does this relate and resonate to the practice that you do?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because it does resonate a lot. I tried meditation many times. I studied yoga, I practiced yoga. That was my world, and I tried to do the meditation, and I felt like I just can't do it. Maybe it's not for me. I couldn't do it. And that was for a long time. And then I started to understand the impact of trauma on our bodies and souls. But trauma was the thing. It's like when I would sit down and be still, pay attention to what was going on in my body, be with the discomfort, which I was very familiar with. That's what was the most familiar thing was discomfort when I would tune into my body. A lot of chronic pain, a lot of tension. So tuning into the body and tuning was just not great. It just wasn't wonderful for me unless I was moving, doing asanas. And the breath was really a huge part of my learning while I was doing that. That was one of the most wonderful gifts that I got from yoga is really paying attention to my breath while I move. And so that was really great. But then with the sitting or with any kind of traditional style of sitting meditation, I would try it. And Chavisa, I would just feel rage come up. And I had a couple of times with these very, very nice people who I was sitting with, got up and it was as if I'd like flipped a table over. I was like, I can't fucking do this. How does, like, why doesn't everybody matter? We have to be more angry because the world's fucked up. And, there was a lot of that going on and it's still there, but it's been metabolized in different ways. My old stuff that I've been carrying had finally gotten a chance over the years to get addressed and held and processed. There was a lot more space that opened up. It wasn't so triggering to sit and pay attention to my breath and notice my thoughts and be still and not fidget. It was too much for a system like mine to start. And so I had a story in my head that I was not good at meditation. But I think that in my practice, one of the things that I really the way I work mostly with most of my clients, and a lot of them have developmental trauma, so it's very early. It's not an event, it was just long periods of chronic overwhelm. And working with that population is really different. I don't want to go into the pain. I don't want them to feel into discomfort, actually, not the beginning. The first, I don't know, many, many sessions is really about resourcing and how do we find, how do we, how do we, how does safety feel in the body? And so that takes time for a lot of folks to just slow down to feel their bodies and not get totally activated. So, it takes go a little bit at a time. It's very, very gentle because that's how things change at the level of the nervous system. Small is big, and slow is fast. And when we go really gentle, things really ripple out and integrate into all the systems and we see change. So I guess this is a very, very long way of answering your question, which is that in my practice and in my own personal practice, uh, I have veered away from the kind of intense feelings and moving towards discomfort. Certainly now there's capacity to be with discomfort and recognize it as useful and really good information, and also absolutely a prerequisite for learning. Like it's part of learning. There's going to be discomfort, of some kind. I would say it's titrated. So it's a little bit at a time. So even with breath work, unless someone has really has done enough for themselves to release the charge in their systems from and having like trauma physiology, I would never kind of push them to do deep, deep, deep breath work like that because it would just, these are systems that are very accustomed to overwhelm, and I don't want to take them there.
I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. I mean, I'm listening to
Yeah.
you, and I love the languaging around resourcing and safety in the body. And I think I'm able to do this meditation
Mhm.
practice because of all the other work that I've done in the last 20 years.
Absolutely.
So the way that I'm thinking
Absolutely.
about it now is like
Yeah.
this kind of postmodern time we're in, we have so many beautiful gifts that we can weave in. And I'm constantly
Mhm.
thinking like a weaver, like it's like you receive a beautiful um, plum colored thread and you can weave it into the fabric of your life, or you receive a beautiful gold thread and you can
Mhm.
weave it into the fabric of your life. And so, I've been,
That's so nice.
I trained in my 20s in Goenka, and I remember doing a 10-day retreat and meditating 16 hours a day. And, I was able to achieve what they wanted to impart and like the practice of it, but it wasn't right for me. Like, and I sat probably for a couple of years
Oh,
then, and then I used to do weekend
yeah.
retreats here. And then over time, my spiritual practice changed and transformed. And so it's interesting for me to return and like find myself returning to meditation and breath work because, and I think because of
Mm.
all the like trauma recovery that I've experienced and all that, um, the fact that I'm safe now and the fact that I'm
Right.
probably resourced,
Exactly.
that it's reasonable
Yeah.
now for me to lie and practice and
Totally.
explore this terrain.
Yeah.
But there's no way in
Yeah.
my right mind in my 20s I would do this. It would be, it would hit terror before it would hit benefit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that sort of, it's so helpful to hear you name that that's how you were able to do this kind of thing with the breath work, is that you have really spent the time. It's been a long time of building capacity, right? So that you can have this divine experience with something that is in your control and your body does anyway.
I mean, I like to play games with myself and like ask myself questions like, why are humans tend to be alive for so many decades? Like it's a long life, right? And my take on it at
Yeah.
this age, middle age, is that
Uh-huh.
actually the art of being human is to learn to feel your feelings. And it's
Yeah.
such complicated terrain to befriend the feeling states that we need decades
Hmm.
to be able to sit with this
Wow.
complexity if we take
Yes,
the invitation, right?
absolutely. If we take the invitation and we're lucky enough to have the time, so much of the work that I do is around helping people feel their feelings, to sort of uncouple the feeling or the emotion from terror. Once the sadness comes up, nope, can't go there. Once the anger comes up, nope, can't go there. It's too scary.
Well, and I think especially for those of us who've had very complex experiences and like, very complicated feelings, like the big,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like the regular, I'm talking about like rage and terror and the big complicated feelings. Like those
Mm.
often will feel, and especially in the work that I'm doing, which is around like trauma-informed divorce and empowerment coaching, the folks that I work with tend to
Mhm.
be going through trauma. And so
Yeah.
there's so much to be said to almost have somebody, well, I like to use the word accompany, but also I think like, if you and I were going to go hiking
Mhm.
in the Himalayas, we're not going to go without somebody who knows the route. So I mean, it's
Mhm.
easier if you have somebody who will accompany you
Mhm.
through the feeling state and you can learn to
Yeah.
like get some footing and they can reassure you and talk you through
Yeah.
it. And maybe you practice that a couple times and you're like, oh, maybe I'll try this little section of the path by myself next month.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
it's huge
Exactly.
difference. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I think we do. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I feel like there's so much value in the work that we do by really creating a container, literally. Like there's this, it's time based, there's this space, might be online. And it is like if I've seen a lot of terrain. I've seen a lot of people exploring and held the line. Like that's literally what I feel like I do is like they're gonna go spelunking and they got their headlight on and they're gonna go explore the internal landscape, right? Touch into things. But they have to know that somebody's got the line. And if I have any sense of distress growing that's beyond their capacity to hold, we pull them up gently, come back. Because we don't need to go, it's not time. Let's work with what happened and then watch the deactivation. And then we come back. And even in that one little cycle of things, so much can change and resolve in the background so that even the next session, quite different. Capacity is different. Awareness is different. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that.
But it's almost like I mean, I don't like the analogy of comparing it to weightlifting or anything like that, but it's almost like you're breaking in skills and capacity. Because I know, it's like what used to take 2 weeks, now it's like synthesized, right? It's like you get familiar with the sweep up and then you sit with the arc of the feeling
That's
state,
right.
whatever,
That's right.
and then you come out and then you
Yeah,
have integration time, but I'm noticing
that's right.
all of that process is much as you do it many, many, many times and you get more comfortable with the integration and the exit and
That's right.
all the components, then it becomes almost more synthesized. So, I mean, it's amazing to me what used to
Absolutely.
take 2 weeks can take an hour and a half now.
But you're right. We're guiding. We're guiding because we know the terrain. It doesn't scare us. There's some things that might be scary that are actually really interesting. So we hold the line, we hold the safety. And as people get familiar with that, with themselves and the process, you're right. They can go and it's like you integrate that in your life. You know how to watch for your activation and what might help you go into deactivation. Having people who have, like you've been through this experience that is not, unfortunately, it's not super unique because a lot of women have abusive partners, then going through really difficult divorces or separations. Um, but what is incredibly unique is like you've taken that and kind of alchemized it into this, like, okay, guys, I know this, I'm the guide here. I know the law here, I know the terrain, I know how things work.
I said I always thought of it as my unwanted PhD.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But I was like,
Yeah.
I've got expertise here. I might as well like make use of this. I mean, to my mind, part of when we go through these transformative experiences and take the bravery to learn the terrain and befriend the terrain and the feeling states is that you almost gain superpowers, right? Like you gain super forces. And so part of that is then I think what happens to, and I'd love to hear your take on it, but it's almost like again that alchemy transformation where for me I'm like I can love massively and expansively, and that's why I meditate is so that I can love in a huge way. And so I think
Yeah.
like when we learn to befriend these complicated spaces, it's almost like our heart becomes more resonant and we're able to love more profoundly,
Mm-hmm.
which is the work we're
Hmm.
doing, right?
I mean, one of the things that I feel like I got from my learning, especially in SE and somatic experiencing and that training and learning, was what felt like the loosening of judgment in general, like judgment of other people, judgment of myself, judgment of my feelings, all the things where judgment can come up and lived all the time unknowingly until there was like, okay, we start developing that dual awareness, noticing our experience and ourselves having the experience. And then things shift. And so that way of relating and being has already shifted. The judgment is not, it doesn't have a grip the way it used to. And that feels like part of that softening and the opening of the heart, where there's a lot more, yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's just like, okay, wow. And yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I think about this in terms of the work that I do, because I also work with folks who pursue assisted psychedelic work.
Mhm.
They have like a couple of sessions of this a pretty intense, profound work with a medicine, and then and then I'll work with them for many sessions just to do the integration because they've had these really kind of mind-blowing insights and incredible moments of connecting dots and all of this stuff that is revealed and emerges. And then where do you put that? How do you integrate that if there isn't the infrastructure for doing it a little at a time so that it can really make like shift what we call the set point from like here to here into like a, more tolerant place, a more resilient place. So it makes me think about that with breath work too. It's just like there's this, we go through the expansion and then often there's the contraction right after, like the next day or soon after. And so I feel like I often will work with people who have gone through a major expansion and then a collapse.
Right.
And it's like those are the two modes. And so we work on like building those muscles, those little interstitial muscles of like, okay, we can go in and out. We can experience the range of what is our birthright as humans and mammals to experience both like the physical sensations and process through our incredible ventral vagal system, connection, empathy, compassion, creativity, all these other things that I feel are truly around, like to me, that's what connects to the spiritual part of life. And for a long time, I mean, it's such a great theme that you brought up today, Shavisa, because I feel like for a long time, I've had like my spiritual life is here and it's like everything kind of felt a little fragmented and not really integrated. And I was still trying to figure out like how does physiological nervous system work? How is that? How does it overlay or work with, the more esoteric, the spiritual, the quantum, all of these things that I don't swim in those waters, but I know a lot of I have good friends who do. And so I hear language around expansion and consciousness and these things.
Mhm.
And I'm constantly trying to understand how does that work from the framework I'm working in now that I'm operating in. And I think that there's something about accessing that ventral vagal part of our nervous system, which is what I understand to be one of the most recent part of our evolution and is what really distinguishes us from other mammals,
Mhm.
is that part that is very, very, very hard to access when we're stressed and when we're afraid or when we're in sympathetic activation because we're supposed to be surviving. But can we come down enough and to be able to be with ourselves and be with the other and be in that kind of embodied state, which I think includes the spiritual part of us, all part of it. So breath has a lot to do with accessing the ventral vagal part of our nervous system and stimulating it, right? So even when we did, I think when we were in the workshop together in trauma of money, I think I did introduce the VU breath, for example. And it's really about that that long, easy exhale, but done with a sound to create the vibrations to stimulate that vagus nerve, which can really, doesn't always, but can help to increase or give us access to that part of us that feels connected.
I love
Anyway,
how you're languaging.
that's a bunch of,
I love how
yeah.
you're languaging it. And I mean, I think this is part of why I feel so much gratitude to be alive on Earth at this time is that we have access to these profound medicines. Like in the city I'm in, they're scattered everywhere, and it's kind of like available to people as they, set up safe container for interacting. Um, but the space that we're in is that there's sacred, profound medicines that can do reparative work that we can't comprehend the level of repair. And so part of my take is that when we've had those massive transformations, then the breathwork space that like the one I'm in now is becomes very available because the past seismic traumas have been addressed and digested and metabolized. And so now there's this open terrain to be able to get in and do this work. And it's interesting because I don't think I would have been able to make this sentence a few months ago, but I think they almost very, very similar experiences of the subconscious addressing what needs to be fixed and integrating it and attending to it. And I'm like, oh, I never knew that meditation could have this kind of reparative space. Like I would have started meditating 20 years ago, like hardcore if I'd known, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's a really good reminder for me because I think I need to get back to my practice. I, yeah, I think what you described as addressing the sort of backlog that's in there as much as possible, so that when we do start exploring, we don't accidentally hit up against some major activation we have, and then that can create a lot of, I mean, we're resilient, but it's a lot. And so I almost think about it as like the work that I feel like part of the work I do, it's not all like this, but is sort of like uh, going in to take, what is it, to dismantle minds, to kind of disarm them.
I understand the concept. It's like
Isn't there's like a, well, yeah, those who go in after conflict to find the minds and neutralize them. And it's such a delicate thing to do. It takes a lot of patience, but yeah.
it's a tender and brave
Hmm.
work, I would say. I mean, the folks that I'm working with,
I definitely,
yeah, I mean, the folks that I'm working with predominantly are in the middle of trauma, right? So
yeah,
it's almost
yeah,
like just because of the arduous process, especially when there's, in my case, like I do high conflict divorces. So there's often long extended processes going on. And so people are in activated states of trauma. And so then it's like,
Mhm.
it's not like you can, it's like to my mind, because they're already in this high complex situation, it's not like you can get to safe ground and rest, right? It's like how to
Yeah.
navigate and ground and stay, um, use somatics to sit in your body while the landscape around you is completely activated. And, like the terrain is
Mhm.
constantly shifting. And so the more we're invited back into our breath and our bodies and learning to hold space and then have safe expression of big feelings and safe expression of and part of that is normalization of it's reasonable to feel angry. It's reasonable to feel rage. Grieving is part of
Right.
this terrain. Like grieving
Right.
and trauma
Right.
are coupled. And so, of course, if you're experiencing trauma, there's lots to grieve. And so, just to
Mm.
have some compassion for all of these big feeling states and then learning to work with them as we can so that you're in the best position to navigate this trajectory.
Mm. Yeah, it really brings to mind when you describe this, I think about, the image for me is of accompaniment, essentially. But, as I understand, trauma is not so much in the thing that happens, but how it's registered, right? And you're dealing with people who are actively in trauma. Like it is trauma, it is traumatic what they're dealing with. It doesn't necessarily mean they are going to be traumatized by it, but they're dealing with it. And I think that one of the things that I understand and I love about this process is that when an event happens, it doesn't automatically mean that we will be traumatized, but part of what contributes to the trauma is the event and not having a compassionate witness.
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's to be
Yeah.
accompanied.
So,
Because if I use the word, and I love that you brought up mammals earlier. I use the term echolocation. Like if you emit a signal and another person's like, "Oh, she's right over there. She's dealing with this," and we're echolocating to each other, then you're not alone, right? And if somebody knows what you're
yeah,
going through and the complexity that you're going
that's
through
right.
and the challenges and what's happening in your process, then you're not alone. And so even if you are having the experience at the moment of trauma, it's less traumatic because there's someone bearing witness and someone holding space for you and someone sending you love and checking in on you. And I think that is very, very, very reparative. And I think, it's like hard for people to understand that simple act of accompaniment is profound. Like that can make an 8 out of 10 trauma become a 2 out of 10 trauma because someone is holding space and bearing witness. And, we live in capitalism. So, capitalism's like, what is that? But that it can change your forward trajectory and change, if trauma has a long resonant um, trajectory. And so if we can make it smaller and more manageable, and
Yeah.
you can have a more functional, positive future, that is such a beautiful gift and such a beautiful investment.
I think that's everything. I really do. I mean, I really believe that it's that specific thing, which is that holding that, being the compassionate witness, that it's like whether a person goes this way or this way, and like one is definitely better than the other, one direction.
Yeah.
It's to have that. And we can go through so much. We can endure and come out not unscathed, but come out really, really fucking good if we have, if we know we've got somebody who's got our back, that gives us courage. And if we have somebody who's a compassionate witness, that keeps what I believe, it keeps the shame from wrapping around the assault essentially. And so that shame is not there so that you can actually heal the wound with somebody who saw it and said, I see what's happening and that is wrong and you don't deserve that. Even just like that. I think about this all the time when I stuff happens, like somebody in the city, somebody gets, bullied by someone else, and they look around and nobody's saying anything. Nobody intervened, but nobody also came up to say, oh, that was awful.
Yeah.
That, just having that the witness, I think it does magical things. It's like neutralizing. So I'm so touched by the work that you do and how you've clarified this as one of the things that you offer in the world that's so valuable because you are accompanying. And if folks just knew ahead of time how that could make the difference for them, to have someone say to them, like, the rage is normal and it's real. The guilt is normal and it's real. The sadness, all of that, and all of the other things. I mean, yeah,
And to circle it back
yeah.
to the beginning of our conversation, I think that's why I'm doing my galactic meditations, where I'm like massively opening my heart
I
into
love,
the size of the universe, is specifically
yeah, yeah,
because what I do with my days and what gives me the most joy is working with people who are going through complicated trauma, where they've often don't have family and friends accompanying them, and the situation is too complicated for people to meaningfully support. And then I
yeah,
can work with those people. And I mean, to my mind, I'm just there to love them. And I tell some of my clients that, like, my job is to love you.
yep,
And
yep,
and we can,
yep,
we can say that I'm your coach, and we can say that I'm, helping you as a divorce coach or an
yep,
empowerment coach. But really, my job title is I'm here to love you. And, I would just have to package it differently for capitalism. But, like my practice is to get up and love people in the morning, which is where I love
wow.
breath work because it allows that massive expanse
That's the thing.
space, which is exactly why I'm
So, yeah. So when you asked how is breath work used in your practice, you mean in terms of like, because what it sounds like to me is this is an incredibly important resource for you to be able to show up and do your work, do it effectively, like to show up and to be able to love someone, love people, and be there and bear witness and hold that. Like, I
the
definitely have, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I cut you off.
Well, I think that was actually a good place to stop and just let you respond. Yeah.
Well, this is
Yeah.
it. I think the breath work is where you replenish yourself. It's like the nourishment
Okay.
for the system that allows you to open and stay expansive so that you
Yes.
can do the
Yes.
practice that you want to do and have the resonant quality and have that
Yeah.
beautiful um, generosity of heart. And I think that's what, for me, the meditation is able to just open up that terrain so you can sit in that space and
Yeah.
emanate and allow it to come forward.
Right.
Such a
Yeah.
treat to
Yeah.
talk to you.
Absolutely. Oh, it's so good. It was just so rich and I have so much. I love that you started with the breath work and that now I'm reminded to get my butt in the chair again
And I'm
and
a big
start
fan
doing the
of get the
practice.
butt in the bed, like
Oh, yeah?
I lie down with my pillows and I get myself into the perfect spot because I'm doing the
Okay.
long meditations and And the one thing I know when
I'm
I'm lying
tired.
down, I can't
Mhm.
meditate at night. I'll fall asleep. And in the middle of the day, so I do it like first thing in the morning or like really early in the morning when my
Okay.
subconscious is open. So
Wow.
4 a.m. sometimes, I'm my hormones are changing. So if I wake up at 2 in the morning and I know my mind's on, I'll go meditate. But I think
Great.
the thing about lying and meditating, well, just physiologically in terms of breath work, is that you have to decide which side you're lying on because one of them opens the heart space bigger than the other, to my experience. So, physiologically, you have to set yourself up to be able to have that. There's too much pressure on one
Mhm.
side of your body. It can, I think,
Right.
change how you're experiencing it.
Yeah. So you have to kind of use some props and things to help with like supporting that heart opening. And yeah. Oh, Jesus, this was really yummy. Thank you.